Tim Hughes here. I'm the CEO and co-founder of DLA Ignite. With me today, I've got Michael Faucette, and what we're going to be talking about is something that's really, really timely, certainly that seems to be in the news at the moment, which is talking about an autonomous future. How agentic AI is going to help us, how it's going to support us, and Michael is here to talk about it. So, Michael, thank you so much for joining us. It's a really exciting time at the moment. As I was saying to you before we came live, I was at Agentforce with Salesforce yesterday, and the whole thing was just about creating bots and stuff like that. So anyway, before we get into the conversation, where can people find you?
Sure. And thanks for having me, Tim. Really was looking forward to this. The best place, Arion Research, AERION research.com. Also, of course, on LinkedIn, my LinkedIn profile. And then also there's an Arion Research page on LinkedIn. And then I'm also on a bunch of the other platforms like Twitter and Blue Sky, that sort of thing. It's always Faucette. So I'm easy to find.
Yeah, the full set of yes. So, same here. So tell us a little bit about the background. It'd be really worth, if there's people that don't understand the agentic AI environment and what's been happening over the last, say, 3 years and how we've actually got to where we are today.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you think about this over the last 3 years, and this is, I've been interested in AI for a long time. And if you know anything about the history of AI, it goes back a long way. But for a long time, it was very, rules based, very kind of, here's a recipe, do this thing, machine learning, neural networks. And then, of course, 2.5 years ago or so, the OpenAI released ChatGPT, and that sort of disrupted everybody's concept of what AI could do. And if you looked at it then, you played with it then, tremendous power to generate things, pattern matching, of course. But I tell you, sometimes the insights that it gives you, if you prompt it correctly, can seem pretty amazing. And over time, now we've evolved, and large language models, different size language models underneath that technology were an important step, but we're moving now towards a place where, where the AI, rather than following a recipe, the prompt, it actually now can just go make me dinner. In other words, I changed from the telling it exactly what to do to telling it the outcome, the goal, the objective. And that's a significant leap forward. And particularly if you think about that from a business automation perspective, where we've always had rules-based things before, and now we're moving to a future where an agent can sit there and perceive things, know its context, it can make decision, it can take an action, and it can learn from that action and then continue that cycle. Pretty amazing.
And so yeah, I mean, I think that I think that in terms of the advancement, it's getting faster every day. How do you actually define agent AI?
Yeah, it's an interesting argument, I guess, in some ways, right? Because there's this whole spectrum of autonomy that comes into this, and when we talk about agentic AI, the word agency, it's not agent. It's really talking about the agent having the ability to act autonomously on its own or without human intervention. Now, it doesn't mean that you always have to operate it that way, right? I mean, it can operate across a spectrum of things, from big control to complete autonomy. And really the idea is it's an agent that runs, that can be aware of its environment. It can operate on goals or outcomes or objectives, whatever you want to call them. And then it can plan, it can take some action for you, and then it learns from that activity. Now, that means that it could be completely autonomous. It doesn't mean that it should be deployed that way, because that really comes back to the other piece of this, which is, making a decision based on use case for the agent. So you have to look at scope. What do you want the agent to do? You have to look at how you want it to interact with humans, because I like to think of this as a as a digital workforce, and you have a human workforce, and they have to collaborate. And then how do you want it to handle anything that doesn't work correctly? So in other words, I might want it to be very rules based and narrow. I might want everything to be approved by a human, and I might want it to, if it fails, to just stop and not do anything, don't break anything, right?
Yes.
Or I might go the opposite direction. I might want it to be, active in a specific domain. So I might want it to be knowledgeable in my industry, down to specific department tasks, whatever. Then from an activity perspective, interaction perspective, maybe I just have humans that monitor it, or maybe I don't have to monitor it at all. And then lastly, handling errors, rather than stopping or failing safe, it actually adapts. It looks at the situation and goes, okay, I'm still trying to get to this goal. Here's what I would do to do that.
So do you have any examples of that at all?
Yeah, the best example, I mean, the easiest one for people to understand, and this is probably the most common use case so far in business, is in customer service. So think about your experience with customer service interactions that you've had in the past. Used to, there was the torture of IVR. So you called up on a phone and went through some logic tree thing and listened, our options just recently changed, and press one for whatever, right. And by then you're screaming at your phone and yeah, exactly. So that's the old way. That's very, very rules based. Then we went to this world where we had chatbots that had, natural language processing, natural language understanding, but they were still operating in a logic framework. So you knew behind the scenes there was a logic tree, and if at any point it fails, it immediately passes you to an agent, or it puts you into some sort of limbo crazy place that you didn't want to be. Right?
I find those useful, but I'm always sitting there going thinking, what is it that when it says what do you want, it's like you want me to ask a particular question in a particular format with a particular set of jargon. And it's like, and I'm trying to think, what is it that I want? So what is it that you want, rather than what's the problem that I want to solve?
That's exactly right. So it understands, but it only understands in a context of a logic tree, so that if you say this, it will do that, right?
Yeah.
So it's a very packaged situation, and it's also one that doesn't allow any flexibility, and it doesn't get to any action. But in this new paradigm, if you took an agentic chatbot and put that on your customer service and make it a team, a hybrid team, right? You have human agents, you have autonomous agentic agents, and that agent then interacts with the customer when they call in, and it is responsive. It's not reactive, which is a big change, right? So rather than you having to say the right thing, it's simply asking you what's wrong, and it's understanding what's wrong. But it can go further than that. And that's actually the biggest key. Rather than, now saying, okay, we have your ticket and we'll send you something, in 2 weeks, it can solve your problem in the process of that interaction. Now, it could also pass you to the human if you reach a point at which you want to talk to the human, or it wants you to talk to the human because you're outside of its guardrails. It can't do the thing that you're trying to get it to do. But for a lot of cases, that simply goes to resolution. Let's say I'm calling in about a software problem. There's a patch. It tells me, oh, here's the patch. I'll ship you the file. And if you install that this way, here are the instructions, then it's completed. Or it might even do better than that. It might actually go solve your problem. Like I saw one demo with Saks Fifth Avenue doing this, and and the person placed an order, and it was the wrong thing, and he needed it for a meeting. And so the agent actually talked him through, oh, well, we can't ship that to you because you need it in 3 hours, but there's a store down the street. You just drop in, pick it up. We'll have it ready for you, and return the other one when you do. That's an agent experience that is significantly different and significantly enhanced from what you would have experienced only a couple of years ago, and in a lot of cases still sometimes if they haven't switched.
I'm guessing the Klarna experience, where they basically made that big announcement that they were getting rid of all their customer service agents and replacing it with AI, and then was it 6 weeks later they said we made a big mistake, and recruiting loads of customer service agents.
Right.
And so in a way that we know that mistake has been made, and it's not about replacing. The argument isn't about replacing humans with AI. It's about AI and humans working together.
Yeah, that's absolutely right, and that's why I mentioned to you before we went live that I've been working on a book, and it's really called.
We forgot to mention the book, Michael.
Yeah, it's about building the digital workforce, right? So that's the title of the book, Building the Digital Workforce: Strategies for Agentic AI Success. The idea is that we want to build this human agent AI collaborative team. Think of that as our new operating model, and then we're going to apply that across the business to different use cases where it can make a big impact. And for part of that book, I just took a survey out of the field, and I was literally just going through the data this morning. So I haven't really done deep analysis yet. But one of the things that jumped out to me was, why are you using agentic AI? Why do you want to do this? And 35% said it was for operational efficiency. But then the second most popular answer was improved customer experience. So big impacts for both of those. And then cost reduction, product service innovation, and lastly, competitive differentiation, although I think over time that's going to shift. But it's an interesting place. People are really focused on the productivity, which I think that started with the generative AI piece, and now as we move into agentic, we can see even more opportunity to increase productivity, increase efficiency.
And because we've had automation, correct me if I'm wrong, people generally call it, was it RPA? And we've had that for, I don't know, 10 years. It's a known IT set of products.
Yes.
But you were telling me before we went live, because we were having a conversation about Salesforce. And I was at an event yesterday. You'd been at the equivalent event in March. And I said I was amazed at how the space at the event wasn't about theatre style. What we're going to do is we're going to sit and tell you how wonderful we are and what great products we've got. Actually, what they'd got was desks where you could turn up with a laptop, and there would be a Salesforce expert that's saying, we will sit down and help you build an agent AI and help you build that. And that was fundamentally different, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Because you had the experience, you sat down and you built one with your voice.
I did. Yeah. They actually added a conversational UI, and I think that's being released generally this summer, June or July, I forget exactly. But but it was really amazing to say, okay, what and you go about this in a different way, right? Than you have done with other, like RPA or BPM before that, business process management before that. Business process management never really provided, I think, as much benefit as people thought, because it let you automate some processes. It's very rigid. It breaks if you try to push it outside that boundary. RPA kind of grew out of that. It's also rules-based. Not that there's anything wrong with rules-based automation. There are certainly, administrative tasks that are very rote that you want to use that kind of approach with. But once you go above that line and you're talking about considerably different level of sophistication required to do that activity. I sort of think of it like that idea I said before about the recipe, right? I can give you a recipe, a prompt, and it'll do the exact thing I told it to do. Or I could just tell you I want dinner using this piece of fish and let it go do the thing it's going to do, because it knows, it can see what's going on, it can reason, it can plan, it can execute, it can learn.
Yeah, and I think that we're going to start. One of the things that that certainly my company's seen is that we've been to a lot of events, AWS, we've been to Crayon event. We went to Salesforce, and there's one thing that is common with all of them is that nobody's doing this. And at Microsoft, at the Crayon event, we had two Microsoft speakers, and they said, we've got no customers doing this, but this is what we're doing. So it was a talk about customer zero. And like anything in IT, whether it was the move from mainframes to Unix, which when I started my career, or later on, it was the move from Unix to cloud, someone has to do it first, don't they?
Yeah, they do, and interestingly, in the survey, it was considerably there were considerably more organizations that were either in the planning to or have implemented in a pilot, but even more than that, there were a large number, 40-ish% or more, that had agents. Agentic AI in production in several use cases across their business, and they were starting to see value out of it. So companies are using this. They're trying it. They're gaining confidence with it over time, and obviously trust and trusting that the agent will perform in the way you want it to. That's a big part of that adoption, but it is something that companies are starting to see now, and they are starting to see benefit, and you are going to see that expansion of those pilots into true production use cases very shortly. And as you know, this is moving so much faster than almost any technology we've seen in the past.
It is, yes. I mean, it's moving way faster than, I've seen, I've been on LinkedIn for 20 years. And I still meet people that say my customers aren't on social media.
Yeah.
With AI, it's just moving so much faster than that.
Yeah. It is, and and it's this shifting to goal oriented activities, and it changes all sorts of things. I mean, it changes your management style. I sort of think of prompt engineering as micromanaging, and people management philosophy has moved away from micromanaging for years, although there's certainly still plenty of people that manage that way, into something that's very goal oriented or outcome oriented. So for your humans and for your agents, you're shifting the way you manage your organization, the way you structure your organization, and you need that collaboration and the tools to connect those. And you mentioned Salesforce and the Salesforce event. One of my favorite things they've done with Agent Force is connect that into Slack, so that Slack becomes the way you interact with the agents in a lot of cases. That's a fantastic way for agents to collaborate with humans in real world, engagements that will produce outcomes.
Yeah. So what do you see as the risks involved here? Ethics and risks.
Yeah, I mean there's always some around AI. We always have discussions around bias in the models themselves. You have some
Mm.
questions about is this if workers are worried because this is going to replace them, and I say not now. I mean, I'm not. I can't see 10 years from now, 20 years from now, because who knows. They are
Yeah.
certainly, the capabilities will change and our roles will change, but I don't think it's there to replace them. But then if you think about the other issues, data privacy, transparency is going to be a really important piece as you go through this. Why did that agent make the decision it made to do this thing? I need to be able to understand that. There was this story a few years ago. I remember, I think it was Google had built this coding platform, and an AI driven platform, and they eventually unplugged it after a couple weeks because the developers that were using it went, it's doing things that we don't know how it does, nor understand in any way what it's doing. All we know is the outcome. And that back then was scary, and it's scary now. We don't want that. We want transparent systems that we can manage. And I mentioned this idea of this spectrum of how we use it. In some use cases, we're going to want humans very involved. In other use cases, we want them overseeing it. And in another use case, maybe we just want them handling exceptions, or things that fall out of the normal activity and process. So it's a learning experience, and we're going to go through a lot of change management over the next few years when it comes to how we build these into the workforce. But it's process driven. It's tied to your business. It's specific use cases, and it's autonomy. A level of autonomy is determined by your level of trust and its level of accuracy and output.
Because I've asked a number of people of different ages, and I've deliberately asked Gen Z and millennial people, would you give your bank details to AI and let it make decisions based on basically spending your life savings? And everybody has said no. Nobody, not one person. And it's not just people of young age like you and me. It's everybody. So I think we've got a little bit way to go in terms of trust, haven't we?
Yeah, I mean, again, that's I told you that I'm using agents for a lot of different things right now.
Yes.
I don't have a shopping agent yet running with
Okay.
my credit card, although I'm not. I would actually say, sure, I would consider that if I had established that the agent was performing correctly, had the right guardrails, it knew the outcomes that I wanted, and then I measured those outcomes and they were accurate. So I think that's the way you have to think of it with business too. I want to move through this in a structured way, slowly rolling it out so that I can ensure along the way that the outcomes, the outputs are what I expected, and that I understand how it did what it did and why it did what it did. And once you build that level of trust, then yeah, I'd give it my credit card to go, do my Instacart shopping or whatever. I think, that just makes sense to me. It's a productivity enhancement that would certainly be welcome. Now, again, guardrails, transparency, understanding, and trust.
Michael, thank you so much for coming on and talking about this. It's been excellent. I think it's something that certainly when you get your book out, I think you need to come back again and talk. So can we pre-order your book yet, or do we need to just follow you for the moment?
I'm gonna have pre-order up shortly. The website's up already. It's yourdigitalworkforce.com.
Okay.
And and so it is there. It will be up for pre-order shortly, and look for it July to August timeframe. And hopefully then, yeah, I'd love to come back and have a conversation
Yeah,
about it.
I'd love to have you back on, because I think it's one of those things that where we spoke in April, and I'm looking at my notes and things have changed already, and here we are in June, and and
Yeah.
and it's just going so quickly. So remind people where they can find you.
Sure. Arionresearch.com. And then, of course, M. Faucette on most of the socials, and Michael Faucette on LinkedIn.
Okay, thanks, Michael. It's been